listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
All right, Sudbury, good morning. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh, glad to be here with you. I'm glad that you're here with us. It's going to be a great show. It's a great morning. We have a lot to talk about this morning, some things we didn't get to yesterday, what we hope to cover today. And all of you joining us on the radio, welcome. 96.7 FM every weekday morning between 7:30 and 8:30 is Sudbury News Talk. And we share our views on the news. And we're also streaming at cklu.ca for those that aren't joining us on the old school radio. You can stream us online. We're also, you can download the Radio Player Canada app on the website and take us with you and listen to us anytime, anywhere on your favorite device. And you can also live stream us video at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. And you can like, share, subscribe, follow, all those things on all of our social medias. We're pretty much not only on those two channels or pages, we also have LinkedIn and Twitter. Soon to come, Rumble, and streaming on our website. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we're just streaming on the two platforms. So make sure to comment on YouTube or Facebook. And we'll do our best to read the comments for those listening on the radio or streaming audio, and get the comments up on the screen for those that are viewing on YouTube or Facebook, or other on our website after the show, as it is on demand there, Sudbury.news, or on demand at Facebook or YouTube. You can watch the show afterwards. You don't have to just come on live. You can also leave comments after the show on the comment section of the Facebook, on Facebook there. So make sure this is your conversation on your station. It's a facilitated conversation about the things that we find important in our community and in our world. We unpack the news locally and abroad. And we're thankful that the show's been here for a little over a year. And we seem to be growing this community of this conversation. So thanks for that. We'll dive right in with a little bit of weather from Sudbury, come back some sports, and then morning salutations with everybody joining us. We'll be back right after this. Sudbury weather brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. Lands on our Sudbury.news website page. And so currently it is 18 degrees Celsius. There is a mist out there. Today becoming a mix of sun and cloud. This morning, 30% chance of showers late this afternoon with a risk of thunderstorm late in the afternoon. Fog patches will dissipate in the morning. Wind becoming southwest 20 kilometers this afternoon. And the high is 29, but with the humidex, it will feel like 35. It already feels humid. Yesterday was quite humid. So do your best if you have any problems breathing at all. It's take the necessary precautions because it will affect your breathing, I'm sure. Tonight, partly cloudy with a 40% chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm. And the low will be 20 tonight. Friday, mainly cloudy with a 60% chance of showers and the high of 26, humidex 31. So today will be the hot day if you're considering the humidex. starting to cool off tomorrow and then into the weekend, but a 60% chance of showers tomorrow. Saturday, a mix of sun and cloud, high of 23. Then a 30% chance of showers on Sunday, high of 23 as well. Chance of showers on Monday, 30% and a high of 22. Same thing for your Tuesday. And then Wednesday, high of 23 with a 30% chance of showers. And a look at your satellite here. It's taken at 2 a.m., showing very little cloud cover over central and northern Ontario. But you can see the clouds, as usual, rolling in from the west. And that is your Sudbury weather, brought to you by sudburyweather.ca. We'll be back with a little bit of sports, news headlines, a little bit of a deep dive that we're wanting to take yesterday into our federal government, and maybe a little bit of a report card on how Justin Trudeau is doing as Pierre Poilievre rolls into town today. We'll be back with all that and more right after this. All right, Sudbury Sports, brought to you by that Sudbury Sports guy. He is Randy Pascal, and his website is sudburysports.com. He has a really great bio on Gio Biondi from Sudbury, played for the Sudbury Whirls, then traded to Hamilton as they won the Memorial Cup, and where he's at in university right now. So if you want to check that out, go to sudburysports.com. Interesting, I know when talking with Dario Zulich, and when Chat GPT first came out, he was really excited about that, and he was really getting into it and telling us all the things he was doing. So the latest thing the Wolves have done was they asked Chat GPT to give them a list of the best Sudbury Wolves, the top 5 Sudbury Wolves of all time. So number 1 is Mike Foligno, according to Chat GPT. Number 2, Ron Duguay. And many of you, if you are sports fans, or you've been following hockey for the last however long, you know who these individuals are. Now, Barry Long, I wasn't as familiar with, but he's number 3, played for the Winnipeg Jets. Mike Foligno obviously played for Buffalo and Toronto mainly. Ron Duguay, mainly the New York Rangers. And then Mike Pekka, number 4, captain of the New York Islanders for many years. And Mark Stahl, who was just traded recently, but was just on the Florida Panthers as they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, losing against the Vegas Golden Knights this year, but definitely almost a team of destiny as they dethroned the Boston Bruins, best team of all time in the NHL, and then beating them in 7 games in the playoffs this year. So Mark Stahl, the 5th best, according to Chat GPT, Sudbury Wolf of all time. And Sudbury's Chloe Lacasse and Team Canada survived an early Katie McCabe goal on Wednesday, climbing out of a deep hole to defeat Ireland 2-1. And that is huge. In soccer, that is huge. And so Lacasse from Sudbury went in the 59th minute of the game. We came back from a 1-0 deficit to defeat Ireland, a strong team, and with keeping our hopes alive to make it further in the World Cup, Women's World Cup of Soccer. So congratulations to her from Sudbury. And she got a lot of accolades from online sports journalism, saying that she's definitely earned her spot on the team and was part of the spark that they needed in that 2-1 victory. So congratulations there, and all the best to the Canadians women's soccer team in the Women's World Cup of Soccer. We will be back. That's your Sudbury Sports, brought to you by sudburysports.com. We'll be back with news, headlines, your comments, and much, much more right after this. Okay, so welcome back. Thanks for being with us. Those are just kind of show, identifiers that we play for those on the radio. If you hear a little music, it just basically gives me a second to kind of change screens and things like that, things that I need to do. Instead of you just watching me do it, it just gives me an opportunity. Or wipe my nose or something like that in between, which I still need to do. So let's see, who do we have joining us so far this morning? I just want to give a few shout outs on this Thursday. Good morning, Sudbury. It's Monique. Thanks for joining us, Monique. Hope you're having a great Thursday. Good morning, Pam. Thanks for being with us. Good morning with a nice smiley emoji. Hope you're having a great Thursday as well. Good morning. Act as if you do make a difference because act as if what you do makes a difference because it does. Sorry about getting that a little bit muffed up at the beginning here, Belinda, but hope you're having a great morning. Keep the positive statements coming. Shane, good morning, my friend. Yes, I meant to message you yesterday that they got busy and got ahead of me, Shane, but expect a message from me today. So David, good morning. Stay safe. I'm assuming you're still at York Extendicare. If you want to let us know how you're doing, we'd appreciate that and hope you're having a good Thursday on the mend. Maurice, good morning. Thanks for being with us as well as Monique. Good rising, wonderful people. Danica, good morning. Heart emoji, love it. Judy, good morning. Thanks for being with us as well. As Denise, morning from Espanola, a warm morning to start the day. Blessings always. Thank you very much. Brian, good morning. Sudbury campers. And Natalie, good morning. Thank you for being my commute chat. Well, thanks for being with us, Natalie. We really appreciate you and keeping us informed whenever we're talking about local issues that you definitely have more information than we do on. Louise, good morning, everyone, on this beautiful day. Thank you for being with us, Louise. It is definitely a beautiful day. And speaking of beautiful days, Sudbury.com via their Village Media site has a feature on all of the, these bouncy castle water parky things that we have even here in Sudbury. Beat the heat, these Ontario water parks with these Ontario water parks this summer. We'll talk about that and the Sudbury one and a story that links to a Timmins story. So we'll connect the dots on that a little bit later. Witnesses say argument preceded Sudbury hit and run. Victim was seriously injured. A 29-year-old woman has been charged after a woman was struck by a vehicle Tuesday afternoon on Moonlight Beach Road in Greater Sudbury. This is an interesting one. Encouraging all of us to avoid drinking alcohol, especially while we're driving. So the police were called before 1 p.m. to respond to a collision involving a pedestrian. Information provided was that the pedestrian, a 24-year-old woman, was struck by a vehicle and the driver of the vehicle drove off. The young woman sustained serious injuries from the collision. A witness told CTV News that an argument between two people in vehicles preceded the incident. When one person got out of their vehicle, they were struck by the other vehicle, which then fled. Police later found the suspect driver on Ash Street in the city. While speaking with the driver, officers detected signs of impairment. Police said the driver registered a fail on an approved screening device and was placed under arrest. The driver failed another screening at police headquarters. She has been charged with dangerous driving, causing bodily harm, failing to stop at the scene of an accident, and impaired driving. She was released on an undertaking with a court date of August the 9th. Again, if you're going to drink, don't drive. I'm sure this particular woman is going to regret everything that happened after she made that decision. And I hope that the lady who was injured, the young woman, that she'll be able to make a recovery and that and our hearts and prayers go out to her. She was seriously injured. So Natalie saying here, your good morning shoutouts made me feel like I'm watching Romper Room. Okay, that's Natalie. That is true. That is true. I remember Romper Room too. And they would basically say to all the kiddies watching all their names and whatever. But didn't that make us feel as kids that we were part of it? And then the odd time they would say our name, they would say like maybe 5 or 6 names every show. And then once in a while they get your name and you'd feel, wow, it's my name. They know I'm watching. Pierre Polyev talks to Timmins community last night. And he's on his way to Sudbury. He'll be here 6 p.m. at the Radisson Hotel, I think in the Palladium room. You have to register, though, in order to go see it. You go to, what is it again? axthetax.ca, something like that. And you have to register to go see. If you wanted to see live, we'll have his comments or whatever he's going to be saying to Sudbury on tomorrow's show. People in Timmins are not too happy as a girl was injured by a needle. It highlights the persistent problem with used syringes. And we have a story from Sudbury as well on this very topic. People in Timmins have been complaining about used needles being discarded around the city, including local parks. So we'll get back to that story. We'll do that story, and then we'll go into a bit of our deep dive later today. CTV staff disgruntled with CEO's vision for the public broadcaster's future. This speaking of the CEO, Catherine Tate, made some comments back in February that the CBC will eventually be transitioning into coverage online only, so becoming a digital platform. That's it. No more radio, no more TV. And so obviously the employees of the CBC are worried about their jobs, and rightfully so. So in reading this story this morning, there's a bit of flip-flopping here from the CBC's CEO on this. According to emails obtained by the Canadian Press, CBC staff had expressed to one another frustration over the comments Tate made that appeared in the Globe and Mail, hinting that plans to transition the CBC to an online-only media platform, eventually dropping the CBC's radio and television coverage. Tate said that if the CBC wants to remain relevant to Canadians, its focus needs to increasingly turn toward their online content and away from their radio and television broadcasts. If we're going to be audience first, we have to be digital first, Tate said. We get up every day and say, what does our audience want? And where is it? And they are digital and increasing. They are digital in increasing numbers. So if you're not there, we're no longer relevant. Tate's comments angered CBC staff who feel that CBC doesn't plan on keeping them around long term. Now, this is coming after the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, made a similar statement first, that in 10 years they plan to be digital only. And so that's just riding on the heels of that, and they must be looking at, how many people are still listening to radio. Maybe everybody's taking their cell phones with them on their commutes, and they're listening that way rather than, traditional radio. And so they could use the money better spent on digital. So I'm not sure all the reasons, but all those jobs are on, the chopping block. Hallelujah. That's good news. No more propaganda on TV. Yes, for sure. That is Belinda. And Denise says, any news that blocks others and silences the people I care not for. Locals best with an open mind. For sure. All right, so that is the CBC, their conundrum that they're facing, and you never know. So there's a little meme here. It says, when the media thinks they can control you, but you don't watch TV. I guess it's a little Kermit the Frog there, shared on our Facebook page. And Don says, nobody wants to pay for propaganda. I can be lied to for free. A couple more comments there. If you wanted to read them, you just go to our Facebook page. All kinds of comments. Okay. Also, we were issued a heavy rainfall warning yesterday. I don't think it, impacted us here. We didn't have that much rain in Sudbury. So this is an interesting story here. And I did hear the rumors earlier, but I guess it's a sure thing now. Sudbury's Lowe's store to become a Rona outlet. Big changes are in store for a home improvement outlet in Greater Sudbury during the next few weeks. The city's Lowe's store on Marcus Drive will be converted into a Rona store. As far as I know, Rona is Quebec owned, and Canadian owned. And then Mike says, yes, bring back the old Rona staff. So I guess a lot of people appreciated the way that Rona's customer service was a little more kind of small town feeling. I think they were kind of right on that as well. Today, so Pierre Poilievre was in Timmins yesterday, and he made some comments about what his platform is. He will be in Sudbury today. We're just loading up the CTV coverage of that particular visit, and I have a story from Sudbury which kind of mirrors what Timmins is going through with the concern that there's just needles everywhere, and what that, is there a danger to the public, and what can we do about it? We've talked about that conversation on the show many times before. But here's Pierre in Timmins, courtesy of CTV, and then we'll be back right after that with the Sudbury-related story, and then our deep dive.
During this tour of Northern Ontario, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he wants to meet and talk with people about their concerns.
What I see is very hard-working, hopeful, common-sense people.
He made a stop at NPHL Drilling, a family-owned company, where he shook hands with supporters.
Like what you're doing for us.
Thank you for that, Tegan. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Tegan.
In Timmins, Poilievre was visiting a city that's seeing a growing grassroots movement and demanding a safer community. He says a local sports store owner told him that he was broken into again this week, the fourth time in 2 years.
Canada doesn't have a lot of criminals. It has a tiny number of repeat offenders. Some of them have 150 or 200 offenses on their rap sheet. My view is, instead of letting them out so they can reoffend, destroy someone's life, and then go back in, let's just keep them behind bars.
When it comes to the opioid crisis, Poilievre says he would fund treatment centers and not safe consumption sites.
What I'll do is I'm going to ban the hard drugs, I'm going to go after the hard criminals, and I'm going to help the people who are addicted, who are suffering from the disease of addiction, get detox, recovery, and treatment.
Housing is another part of Poilievre's platform, and he says he would link the number of federal infrastructure dollars a municipal government gets to the number of houses it allows to be built.
Let's bring homes that people can afford by incentivizing the local city councils to speed up and lower the cost of building permits to build.
The chair of the Northeastern Ontario Municipal Association thinks it's a good idea.
Any type of rethink that is looking at becoming more productive, flatlining the actual policies and the procedures, and creating incentive not just for municipalities, but for both layers of government, quite frankly.
Poilievre heads to Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury on Thursday, and he'll round off the tour with a stop in North Bay on Friday. Lydia Chubak, CTV News, Timmins.
So thanks to CTV for that story. We really appreciate that. And little insight into, what Pierre Poilievre may be talking about when he's in Sudbury tonight at 6 o'clock at the Radisson. I got to find a story because Billy shared it with me, local story, and I'm thinking it's not going to be there, but let's hope that it is. And it might be. Yeah, there you go. So Billy shared something with me here, and it's not there. It's somewhere else. Here it is. Okay, so Timmins, we talked about the story of them, not being too happy finding needles strewn about. Well, here's a local story about that near the water park on Lake Ramsey, the bouncy castle water parky thing. And a particular person here said that they chose to take the business name out of where this needle was found because she was getting flack on social media that she was giving the business a bad name by saying there was a needle there. But what ended up happening was they were swimming in Ramsey Lake and there was a needle while they were swimming in the water, like not floating, but on the bottom on the sand. And they, someone picked up the needle and threw it on the shore. And there's a picture of it here. And that just, and it just went viral. I think like something like 900 shares, something like that. And so there's all kinds of replies, all kinds of, people saying it should be reported to the health unit. Some people thinking it's fascist to post this kind of thing and make people feel that it's a good thing to. I'll just say some of the comments in this thread are beyond disappointing, disgusting, and ignorant barely covers it. Taking a fascist approach towards undesirables does not work. Never has. Unfortunately, fixing this issue requires a generosity of spirit and level of understanding and compassion that isn't on display here. And basically, let's get rid of these elements in our society because criminalizing mental health and addictions has to be so effective. Come on. Has been so effective, right? So this is, controversial, I guess. I'm not sure why. I just don't think needles should be found, where our children are swimming, regardless of how we're handling the opioid crisis, right? I just think it's not a fascist thing to make light of letting people know that, hey, maybe there's needles on public beaches and you maybe should be aware of that as you go in to the water with your children. I don't think that's fascist in any way. I myself, I don't know. It's a horrible, horrible thing and done on purpose, 110% on purpose, but people complaining about all the homeless junkies on the streets. Yeah, it's pretty crappy and messed up, but it does teach, I was 18 or 19 years old when I learned that opioids existed. Actually, I only knew about pills, but then didn't know opioids was the component that gets you high. And I didn't know that I didn't know what medications it was and definitely had no clue what it did or the side effects. I didn't know the word withdrawal meant either, or relapse or any of these things. So talking about education there, right? We need to be educated in our communities. So Pierre Poilievre talking about rehabilitation rather than harm reduction. So he would rather see rehabilitation as part of his platform of people and not just safe injection sites and harm reduction. So harm reduction, there could have been harm to this particular child swimming, right? In Lake Ramsey, that there would have been harm, like let's say they stepped on it and they then contracted hepatitis C. And so there was harm to that child, even though we're taking the route of harm reduction for people using, which I think is part of the process of rehabilitation. We're there, but it needs to be in a controlled environment, not just giving people needles to go out and use them anywhere and then drop them anywhere and then cause harm to other people who aren't using. Good morning, Denise. Thanks for being with us. Much appreciated. I'm just putting people's comments here on the screen as we're kind of moving on with our subject matter. And I noticed a lot of comments coming in. So I apologize that not able to give them their due. But I just wanted to make that connection because there was a Sudbury story related to the Timmins story. I don't think it quite made the mainstream media yet, but it was a viral story on Facebook. So I just wanted to share that and make sure that was wanted to make sure it was part of our show. Good morning, Vin. Thanks for being with us, my friend. So here we go. A little bit of a deep dive today. As Pierre Poilievre is in town and he's hoping to be the solution to the current government kind of thing. But what we ask ourselves, what is our current government? There was a question I asked on the show earlier, what good thing has Justin Trudeau done for Canada, right? Good morning, Mona. Thanks for being with us. And it was hard for people to come up with that, right? And then we had Ray showed, Harrison Faulkner did his, I guess, rant or whatever. And he asked the same question. I don't know if he got that from us, but he definitely asked it. But do you feel Justin Trudeau is doing a good job? But if you take what's being said around the world, basically from other countries. And so here's just an example of that, because recently there was a poll that came out and said Justin Trudeau was in fact voted the worst prime minister of all time in Canada, right? And maybe there's some reasons for that. I don't know. So I thought I would kind of put a few things together to see what could be contributing to that. And let's see if we can get some answers.
We've ruffled some feathers up north, as in Canada. All right, over the weekend, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressed his outrage that Canadian Muslims are thinking for themselves and expressing strong disagreement with moves to normalize radical sexual teachings in schools.
Leave our kids alone! Leave our kids alone! Many immigrant communities supported Trudeau, and now what's he saying? He's saying the Muslims are being brainwashed. We've always had a concern. If what's happening in our schools is getting worse and worse and worse, and now they've crossed the red line. Our children are our red line.
Rather than perhaps reconsidering his nation's lurch to push these transgender and non-binary propaganda things on kids, Trudeau pulls a Hillary. Yeah, he blames the vast right-wing conspiracy.
There is an awful lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. People on social media, particularly fueled by the American right wing, are spreading a lot of untruths. These are people on the far right who have consistently stood against Muslim rights in the Muslim community. But they are weaponizing the issue of LGBT.
Of course, the angle was the first in cable to showcase Muslim parents, those who are fed up with sexual indoctrination squads and who are now working with social conservatives to stop the madness. Now, as for Trudeau, he's in his job for one reason, his last name. Well, maybe for another, maybe for his hair. It's pretty good. Now, personally, I love my Canadian friends, and it's a gorgeous place, but we're not about to take moralistic lectures from people who allow China to directly influence their elections, or to push more people to kill themselves, or to turn truckers into public enemies number one. Trudeau is a rather silly, fatuous man who touts multiculturalism, but really wants a dictatorship of ideas. Anyone who challenges his sacred cows may be canceled, punished, or, in some cases, even jailed. Nice try, Justin.
Okay, so that's just one point of view that you could see, from the United States, from one kind of angle, and maybe making the argument to why that poll from Canadians, not Americans, came in and said that they voted him the worst prime minister of all time. But let's just dive into maybe some other reasons. This is Harrison Faulkner. His take on some of those reasons too. speaking directly of the poll. We'll be back right after this.
Well, the most surprising news came across our desks over the weekend. So surprising and shocking that we felt we just had to address it on Ratioed on Monday. There were audible gasps in the newsroom when we read this story, but we did think to ourselves, maybe the legacy media are back to their old tricks, not telling the truth and lying to us. Because we read this article in the Toronto Star, of all places, that said Justin Trudeau, in a recent poll, was voted as the worst prime minister in the last 55 years by Canadians. The worst prime minister. I know, that doesn't make any sense, because as you drive throughout your town, you see all those bumper stickers that people say they love Justin Trudeau. We love Justin Trudeau, the bumper stickers read, or the flags outside of people's homes that say, go Trudeau, go. Or you even seen maybe the footage from the Indigenous Games. Or maybe you've seen the footage from Belleville, Ontario recently. Or how about that footage from the Calgary Stampede last year where he was mobbed by his admirers? So you read the news that Justin Trudeau was voted by Canadians as the worst prime minister. Well, that doesn't make any sense now, does it? How could that possibly be? Drop a like in the video. Help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel. The comment question for the episode is this. Can you name one good thing Justin Trudeau has done since becoming Prime Minister? Let me know in the comments if you can, and let's get into it. Take a look at this article from the Toronto Star over the weekend. Justin Trudeau is Canada's least liked Prime Minister in 55 years, a new opinion survey finds. I wonder why articles like this are starting to come out. You might think maybe the legacy media are turning on the man that writes their checks. Interesting, to say the least. Justin Trudeau has been voted Canada's worst prime minister in the past 55 years by 3 out of 10 respondents in a new public opinion survey from ResearchCo. 3 out of 10 Canadians, 30%, think that Justin Trudeau is the worst prime minister in recent history. That's almost identical to the share of the popular vote that Trudeau got in the last election, 32%. Trudeau happens to hold the title of being the Prime Minister with the slimmest overall share of electoral support in Canadian history. And now, he also gets to hold the title for being the most disliked Prime Minister in Canadian history. I mean, if ever there was a way to determine how you're doing on the job, this might be it. Being the most disliked by the people that supposedly elected you 3 times, but also holding the title for the slimmest share of votes. Not the best position to be in if you happen to be the leader of a country. But who's kidding who? Justin Trudeau didn't need to read the Toronto Star article about him being the least liked prime minister in Canadian history to know how much Canadians actually dislike him. All he has to do is just show up anywhere, actually. You see, last week when he was in Belleville, Ontario, he got run out of town by his own people. His own people heckled him so badly that Trudeau had to cut his visit short and hightail it out of Belleville. Take a look at this footage from last week if you haven't seen it already. All of the viral footage of Justin Trudeau getting brutally heckled has become such a problem for the legacy media journalists, the ones that are basically paid by Justin Trudeau to propagandize on his behalf, that they now have gone on to just attack the protesters and say that they're unhinged, that people have lost their minds. There's no excuse for yelling at the Prime Minister who has basically ruined their lives. It's interesting because the legacy media journalists never once seem to be interested in laying blame at all of this national anger at the man causing the national anger. It's always the people that are angry that have to be accused of being crazy and lunatics and, out of their minds. These legacy media journalists are likely not the ones who are out on the street, are lining up at food banks, lost their jobs because they refuse to take a shot. They never face the actual problems that the majority of Canadians, everyday Canadians, face. And yet whenever this footage comes out of these Canadians letting the leader that runs them have a piece of their mind, it's always the protesters that need to be somehow put in their place. Even worse for the Justin Trudeau brand, a week before that Belleville disaster, Trudeau gave a speech to kick off the Indigenous Summer Games. And take a listen to how the crowd welcomed him on stage. Trudeau snubbed the Indigenous communities on Truth and Reconciliation Day to go surfing in Tofino. And, he also responded to an Indigenous protester at a Liberal fundraiser by saying, "Thank you for your donation."
People in grassy narrows are suffering from mercury poisoning. You committed to addressing this crisis.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much for your donation tonight. I really appreciate it.
He's not maybe the most liked person in the Indigenous circles, but he really has tried to become the Truth and Reconciliation man. Kneeling beside that grave with his teddy bear, plunging the country into a national state of mourning for 6 months, accusing the very country that he leads of being genocidal. Even after all of that woke posturing and display of national self-loathing, Trudeau just can't seem to catch a break with the Indigenous community. You've all seen the footage of Justin Trudeau getting heckled wherever he goes in this country. He can't go anywhere, actually, without facing the anger of the people. The anger that he caused on these people. But perhaps the most viral clip of Justin Trudeau being swarmed by protesters happened back at the beginning of 2023, when he took his cabinet for a retreat to sunny Hamilton during late January. I was on the ground to capture the exact moment when Justin Trudeau decided to walk through a crowd of protesters almost intentionally and attracted the anger of the people. Take a look at this. The good thing for Justin Trudeau in all of this is that none of this should really come as a shock to him. You see, he was able to get a front row seat with his father, Pierre Trudeau, when he would roll through rural areas in Canada and get the exact same treatment. What's the old saying? Like father, like son? Take a look at this 1982 CBC clip. Back when CBC was a real news outlet. You see, on one of these cross-country train vacations that Pierre Trudeau took, he brought along with him a young Justin Trudeau. And as the train was rolling through Sudbury, Ontario, protesters greeted Pierre Trudeau's train by throwing eggs and tomatoes at the train car. Take a look at this CBC clip.
The egg-spattered train carrying vacationing Prime Minister Trudeau has been dubbed the Caesar Salad Express. But nothing could have prepared the Prime Minister for the greetings he got in Northern Ontario. In Chapleau, it was a warm welcome, baskets of eggs and bouquets of flowers. But in Sudbury, it was back to making salads.
It was the largest and probably the most unfriendly crowd on Trudeau's trip. Hundreds of angry people hurled insults, tomatoes, and eggs at the private car carrying Trudeau and his 3 sons. When the tomatoes and eggs ran out, they started throwing rock. For many, Trudeau's visit was a chance to vent their anger over the economy.
Bizarrely, the same poll that found Justin Trudeau to be the worst prime minister in 55 years, the most disliked prime minister, also happens to put Pierre Trudeau as the most liked prime minister, the best prime minister in the past 55 years. Unbelievable, I know. 20% of respondents put Pierre Trudeau as their favorite prime minister, whereas 30% of respondents put Justin Trudeau as the worst prime minister. Also, in a weird way, Stephen Harper happens to be the second worst and second best in this poll. The ranking for worst prime ministers goes as follows. Justin Trudeau at 30%, Stephen Harper at 80%, Kim Campbell, who basically spent as much time as Prime Minister of Canada as Liz Truss spent as Prime Minister of the UK, comes in at third place with 7% of the vote as the worst Prime Minister. Then it goes to Brian Mulroney, Pierre Trudeau, Jean Chrétien, Joe Clark, Paul Martin, and John Turner. Look, if you're the Conservative Party of Canada and you're Pierre Poilievre, you have to be looking at the next election as a make or break moment.
So yeah, this is very, very one-sided, obviously, right? But at the same time, saying it with conviction and passion and whatever on the one side. So for conservatives listening to this, it's like somebody liberal or NDP listening to CBC. And for a liberal listening to someone like Harrison Faulkner, very staunch liberal, it's like a conservative listening to the CBC. So they're wondering why, people, conservatives have a hard time listening to the CBC. It's the same. So just now you can understand when you're listening to someone like Harrison Faulkner speaking from a very, dig in your heels conservative point of view and it gets your blood boiling a bit. That's what conservatives go through with CBC, because CBC does the same thing, but on the left. And then liberals think, oh no, that's Canada. Everyone thinks like that. Yeah, there's just these crazy conservatives. It's not like that one bit. It's just very, very far left when you're listening to CBC and mainstream media in general. And so listening to this isn't hard for me because I listen to both sides all the time. But just to give you an idea, if you, let's say, listen to mainstream media a lot, and then this is hard to listen to, it's the same thing people go through listening to CBC. If you're kind of a little bit more middle of the road or a little more to the right, it's very frustrating to listen to very politicized reporters on the left. And this is a politicized reporter on the right. So I'm just basically saying a fact. That's what it is. I'm not saying this guy has all the answers. He has a conservative point of view. He's very passionate about it. And he's pointing out things, though. You just have to listen to what he's talking about. And then you make the decision for yourself. It's like going into a courtroom. And you're going to hear the one side, the lawyer for the victim, the lawyer, and then the prosecution or whatever for the perpetrator. And each lawyer is going to go all in for that side. And this is what we have now in our society. It's left and right. It's divided. It's the same thing in the United States, and it's gotten the same in Canada. However, in Sudbury, we really don't have anything like we're on the radio right now, thanks to a community radio station. So it's the only way to get out another point of view. Like it is the only way to hear the other lawyer speak. It really is. And so from my heart of hearts, knowing this is why we present this type of material on the show. If I was to play a bunch of CBC clips or CTV clips, which I do too, but if I was just to do that, I would be no different than the mainstream media, only giving the one side, right? I really do my best, knowing that there's an imbalance in our city, especially, to even hear the other side, even give it the time of day. And I can see it kind of triggers a lot of people, and I can see why. But at the same time, it does trigger people to listen to our tax-funded media from the money we pay, and to hear things back that we don't necessarily agree with a spin that isn't representing us, can be frustrated. This is independent media. Your money does not go towards us. Can you imagine if on top of that, your tax dollars were funding Harrison Faulkner's Ratioed? Your tax dollars. And he was being paid from you to be able to give the news in that light. That's how it feels for someone who's more on the conservative end of things to listen to mainstream media. Just as frustrated as you are to hear that, but then on top of it, our tax money is paying for that. So I hope I made the point clear and it's not misrepresented by my own lack of communication skills. Again, Jordan Peterson, like no one else, is able to describe this in detail, and he gives a little bit more of the deep dive aspect into what left-leaning ideology is and how far it can go. And
totalitarian systems are ruled by a sort of singular top-down tyrant. Hitler, Stalin, Lenin. It's like, no, a totalitarian state is ruled by the lie.
Hello and welcome to Off Script. My name is Stephen Edgington. How do you win the culture war? What lessons can we learn from Soviet dissidents? I sat down with Dr. Jordan Peterson to discuss these questions and more. Thank you very much, Dr. Peterson, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Has the right lost the culture war?
We'll see. The right lacks vision. They play a rearguard game. They don't have a compelling story to tell young people. And because they're conscientious, conservatives are conscientious, it's easy to hoist them on the petard of guilt. And the psychopathic narcissists of the radical left are unbelievably good at that. And so the conservative types are set back on their heels in a big way, and they don't know how to articulate their own principles. Partly because, like, if you're a conservative, you don't really articulate your principles. You just go about your business, right? You think, well, we'll just do things the way they have been done if they're working, and we'll go attend to our business, and we won't think too much conceptually, and we'll, you know, act practically. And so if you go listen to the Republicans, for example, I went to the Republican Governors Association meeting, and it wasn't inspiring, but the governors would present their policies sort of at the level of practical intervention. They're very practical people, and that's fine, except it doesn't work well against the messianism of the left. So the Conservatives are in a position where they just get dragged towards the left one step at a time, and they're also terrible strategists. So, for example, in the United States, the education system, the public education system, eats half of the state budgets. Half. In New York, it's $30,000 a year to educate the typical student. So you imagine that means they're spending near $1 million a year to educate the typical class of 30, to not educate the typical class of 30 people. It's just beyond comprehension. 99% of the donations that are made by the teachers union politically go to the Democrats, and the bloody Department of Education, the faculties of education, have a hammerlock on teacher certification, right? So they have the worst students who go into education for the worst motives, and then they have the worst professors and researchers teaching them. And the faculties of education have done nothing but damage for the last 60 years, and the Republicans are too daft to notice that they've turned the entire culture over to the faculties of education. So it's no bloody wonder the Conservatives lose. Like, as strategists, they're 10th rate, and they're not visionaries. Now, they have traditional right on their side, and that's a big deal, but you know, that can be overthrown by assiduous effort on the part of the radicals, and especially the psychopathic radicals. They thrive in chaos, so they're more than willing to turn the whole apple cart upside down in the hopes that they'll be able to scrounge among the ruins and dance in the flames.
It's this issue of how to fight back against this authoritarianism that I'm curious to talk about for this next hour or so, maybe longer, we'll see. But one issue recently has been debanking. So in Canada, a couple of years ago during the trucker protests, you saw truckers whose bank accounts were closed down. They were removing money.
Yeah, we pioneered that here in Canada.
Absolutely. Well, I think the Chinese probably pioneered it,
well,
and then
it could be.
The Canadians took it
At least
up.
among democratic countries.
Well, exactly. And in the UK recently, Nigel Farage has had issues with certain banks refusing to offer him services. Other politicians on the right have had the same thing. And the Conservatives have said in the UK, you know, they're warning the people who are celebrating this could happen to you.
Those are the useful idiots. The useful idiots always think, this will never happen to me. You see this with the Democrats in the US. So I just interviewed Robert F. Kennedy, who in principle is a Democrat. So they took down the interview. And that just shocked me, because it's a presidential campaign. And the lefties squawked and moaned and bitched for like 3 years about Russian collusion, all of which turned out to be a complete bloody lie because they were interfering with the election. And now YouTube can censor a presidential candidate mid-election, and there isn't a peep from the left. And the reason for that is they think, well, Kennedy's not a real Democrat, without noticing for a second that the definition of real Democrat is going to get increasingly narrow as we move forward, and that's already happened, you know. And I tried for years talking to the Democrats, probably 36 senators and congressmen alike, always asking them the same question. I asked Robert Kennedy this too. When does the left go too far? And to a man or woman, they were either unwilling or unable to answer that question. And so, well, so here we are with this increasing, the increasing normalization of censorship and canceling. And this, by the way, is also a technique that's used by dark tetrad types, right? It's the female equivalent of antisocial behavior, right? So men who are antisocial tend to use physical aggression, but females who are antisocial tend to use reputation destruction and denigration, gossip, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. And that's unbelievable. Now, men can do that too, and will, and do, especially online. But that's enabled by the corporations, you know, the media corporations who are in control of social media communication. So, yeah, people think, well, as long as it's only happening to Kennedy. It's like, have it your way, dimwits.
Now, this culture war, so-called, has been going on for a long time now, fairly long time. You've been at the centre of it for years and years and years, and you've really experienced some terrible abuse, and really, I don't know how you went through all of that and came out as you are today. When you look back to the Soviet Union, other authoritarian regimes, obviously there were certain dissidents within those regimes, and I want to talk about them and how they coped with some of the most terrible experiences. Now, obviously you're not in a gulag, you're not in Auschwitz, so there's a sort of different level, isn't there? But what do you do when you know that things aren't going to get better? So let's say you're a Soviet dissident and there's just no hope. Do you survive? Do you fight? What do you do in that situation?
Well, everything you do in life is a matter of faith. And why would I say that? The atheist materialist types, the skeptics will say, well, faith just means that you believe in things that aren't there. It's like, that isn't what it means. That's a 13-year-old critique of religious belief, a smart 13-year-old's critique of religious belief. It means that you stake your fate on some set of propositions. Now, the thing is that you do stake your fate on some set of propositions because you have to act in spite of your ultimate ignorance. So in the final analysis, you have to move forward in ignorance. And you move forward in ignorance by assuming the utility of either a stable set of principles, there can be alternatives, or by wavering. Well, here's one principle. Say what you need to save your skin in the moment, or to gain advantage. And that means that you have faith in the power of deception. It means that you have faith in the power of the lie. Right. Well, we know who the eternal ruler of the kingdom of the lie is. Or you can have faith in the truth. And that means, to have faith in the truth means that you act in accordance with the assumption that whatever happens, if you tell the truth, is by definition the best thing that could possibly happen. And that means independent of the short-term consequences for you. Now, you're stuck with that anyways, because if you decide to lie, you're making the assumption that escaping scot-free or obtaining an undeserved advantage will pay off over the long run, all things considered. And you have no evidence for that at all, and everyone knows this. You can do something stupid to get out of a jam and get away with it, but the chickens come home to roost, and virtually everyone knows that. So you're going to evince faith in one strategy or another, or you're going to lie sometimes and tell the truth other times, and I wouldn't recommend that at all, because all that does is make you one confused person. So you're playing both ends against the middle. When Christ comes back, in the book of Revelation, he says the worst form of hell is reserved for the people who play both ends against the middle, who sit on the fence. Right, so that's worth knowing. And so if you are wise and you have any sense and a certain degree of courage, then you say what you have to say, and you let the devil take the hindmost. And so that's what you do if you're a dissident. You make your bloody decision. And I've seen this. I just talked to Douglas Murray about this.
So yeah, and we'll have to leave it there. It's great interview with Dr. Peterson. And yeah, no, I'm not giving the show over to other people or whatever, just trying to, educate possibly the people that are asking those very questions, not understanding the world in which we live to the degree as what's going on, trying to shed some light on the world we live in. And Dr. Peterson makes some poignant points about when does the left go too far, what it means to be a tyrant. Do you put faith in a lie or in the truth? I think many politicians are known by now to kind of put their faith in the lie, and then things are known a little bit further on. Talking a little bit about liberal principles, conservative principles, diving off, going forward from our conversation of just understanding the difference between the two, and a little bit of deeper thinking. If we can do that in the morning, a little bit of deeper thinking instead of just surface making everything about the left and the right and being divided, and just maybe understanding, first of all, what left and right is, and things like that. So we can be human more or less than just bleed red or bleed blue or whatever color orange that you choose. And so understanding the principles in which make you a person, and then trying to find those values and principles in the people in which we elect, and that we give power over to them in order to make decisions on our behalf. It's no small thing. And people don't understand political structures and what they mean. What's the difference between NDP, liberal, conservative, just on a basic note. And I think that's by design, to not being educated into what these things mean, right? So I'll do my little part in my little station, in my little city, in my little studio to do this to some extent, at the same time trying to give so exactly, right? So that's exactly what they said to Christ. And so you have the same question, right? So here you go. And that's it. That's Sudbury News Talk for today, Thursday. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow. And that's a wrap. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily. Thank you for all your comments and staying with us for a little bit of that deep dive today. I hope we all learned something anyways, and able to take something positive away from that as we learn things from other people we wouldn't have normally watched or heard or listened to or taken into, into ourselves, that we can learn from other points of view. So stay tuned out for your Shot Daily. See you same time, same place tomorrow. Have a great one, everyone. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.